20,000 pages of documents in the Jeffrey Epstein saga have been released, and boy do they say a lot. From high-profile connections to politics to the sexual abuse claims and even direct references to President Donald Trump, we are going to go through the major bombshell highlights from this document.
The shadow of one of the most notorious scandals in modern history is once again stretching across headlines, broadcasts, and digital platforms. The legacy of Jeffrey Epstein, a case that exposed layers of wealth, influence, and systemic failure, has...
We are seeing Epstein's own words allegedly connecting President Donald Trump directly to his inner circle after that infamous 2008 plea deal that Epstein entered into. Now, but I want to be clear about something, okay? As we go through these communications, Donald Trump has never been officially implicated in any wrongdoing, and he's never been charged with any crime connected to Epstein. Having said that, his name comes up a lot in these documents. And I say, when we go through these communications, let me be clear, we obviously can't go through 20,000 pages of documents, but what we can do is go through some of the major highlights so far. And this massive document dump has a lot. And this came after House Democrats released some very interesting and arguably provocative exchanges, communications. So let's start here. You have one from 2011 from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell, his convicted sex trafficker associate, saying, quote, "I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump." And then it's kind of redacted, but victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. Maxwell actually writes back, quote, "I have been thinking about that." You have another communication where Epstein tells author Michael Wolff in 2019, quote, "Redacted Mar-a-Lago, redacted." And by the way, this email was apparently sent several months before Epstein died. It continues, quote, "Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop." And then you have one more from 2015 I want to highlight where Wolff appears to tell Epstein that CNN may be asking Trump about his connection to Epstein. Remember, this was when Trump was announcing that he was going to run for president. To which Epstein asks, quote, "If we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be?" Wolff responds, "I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You could hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say, Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime." By the way, Wolff responded to this breaking news saying on Instagram, quote, "Perhaps we're getting close to the smoking gun. You know, it's curious that Epstein's relationship with so many people in public life has damaged them considerably, but the one person who he was closest to has not been held accountable. That's Donald Trump." Now remember, all of this is years after Epstein's 2008 plea deal where he avoided federal charges, and Trump had already started to distance himself publicly from him. But these emails suggest that behind the scenes, Epstein, his associates, his circle, they were still talking about him, strategizing around his image, tracking who said what, tracking what his potential presidency may look like. And that is what has sent this story spiraling, because hours after the dump from the House Oversight Committee, Congress started pushing for more. You had congressional members who now want the Justice Department to hand over all of the Epstein-related communications. And that pressure is building. The House is moving to force a vote that would compel the Justice Department to release all of the Epstein files. In fact, Speaker Mike Johnson announced that he's
resurfaced with renewed intensity. At the same time, Donald Trump finds himself facing intensified media scrutiny as past associations are pulled back into the spotlight. This resurgence is not happening in a vacuum. It's unfolding in a climate where public trust in institutions remains fragile and political polarization runs deep. When a scandal of this magnitude re-enters the conversation, it doesn't just reopen old files, it reopens unresolved debates about power, accountability, and transparency. The legacy of the case is complex. It exposed how elite social circles can operate in insulated environments where wealth and status provide extraordinary access. It revealed how influential figures across politics, business, academia, and entertainment moved within overlapping networks. It forced institutions to confront uncomfortable questions about oversight and enforcement. Now, as archived material circulates again, including court filings, deposition excerpts, and public photographs,
files immediately saying, we're going to put that on the floor for a full vote when we get back next week. And this is creating a major political firestorm. You have newly sworn-in Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva, who signed the discharge petition, providing the decisive 218th signature that was needed to force that vote on the release of the Epstein files. And in her remarks on the House floor, she said, quote, "Justice cannot wait another day," and also thanked the Epstein survivors who were in the gallery watching. So I want to talk about what we are seeing in this document dump, and it's just going to be me. I'm going to do it solo. Let's go through it. Now, the new emails, they keep coming, and they go far beyond just Donald Trump. For example, Steve Bannon, okay? Steve Bannon, Trump's former advisor, in a June 2019 email right after a photo was taken of Trump shaking hands with Prince Andrew. Okay, this was during a state visit. We know Prince Andrew. We'll talk about him a little bit more. Quite a character in all of this. Epstein wrote to somebody who, according to CNN, appears to be Bannon, saying, quote, "Prince Andrew and Trump today. Too funny." And then he added, "Recall Prince Andrew's accuser came out of Mar-a-Lago," seemingly referring to Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who passed away several months ago. Well, Bannon appeared to reply, "Can't believe nobody is making the connective tissue." So this email suggests that Epstein and his inner circle were actively tracking the public connections between these powerful men. And by the way, talking power in that vein, theoretical physicist Lawrence Krauss messaged Jeffrey Epstein in one communication, quote, "Let's do a Men of the World conference," and attached an invite list that included Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, Woody Allen. These are all people, as you know, who faced sexual misconduct allegations in one form or another. Now, before actually we go back to President Trump, let me actually go to former President Bill Clinton, because his name popped up in these materials too, or seemingly. And to be clear, he too has not officially been implicated in any wrongdoing or charged with a crime in connection with Epstein. But as it is well documented, the two had a relationship. And these communications reveal what may have ultimately led to their falling out. So, in an email exchange with Catherine Rumler, a former White House counsel to President Barack Obama, you have this communication back in January of 2016, where Epstein writes seemingly about Clinton, quote, "My memory is a friend killer. I stopped talking to Clinton when he swore with wholehearted conviction that he had done something. He had forgotten that he also swore the exact opposite to me only weeks before." By the way, a Clinton spokesperson said in a statement that was published by the New York Post, "Who knows what they're talking about? What we do know, and have always said, is that President Clinton knew nothing about Epstein's heinous crimes and hadn't spoken to him in 20 years. Now here it is in black and white." Going back to President Trump, the emails appear to show Epstein had these sharp, private opinions about Trump and his mental state. For example, in 2018, Epstein wrote in an email, "You might want to tell your Dem friends that treating Trump like a mafia don ignores the fact that he has great dangerous power. Tightening the noose too slowly risks a very bad situation. Not so with this maniac." Called him borderline insane at one point and said that would be corroborated by some that are close. Then you go to a 2017 email after Trump's so-called Muslim ban, and Epstein told a New York Times reporter, quote, "Donald is bleeping crazy. I told you that." And in an email to New York Times reporter
at orbit, the renewed attention is less about a single document and more about the cumulative weight of association. Television panels dissect timelines. Commentators analyze old interviews. Online platforms amplify clips that have existed for years but are now gaining fresh traction. The cycle feeds itself. Coverage generates reaction. Reaction generates more coverage. At the center of this renewed focus are documented instances of social overlap between the former president and the financier during the 1990s and early 2000s. Publicly available records have long acknowledged acquaintance. Supporters emphasize that social contact does not equal criminal conduct. Critics argue that proximity to a convicted offender demands thorough scrutiny. The distinction between legal liability and public perception becomes crucial here. Legal standards require evidence of wrongdoing. Public opinion often hinges on optics, judgment, and ethical expectations. In a hyper-connected era, perception can influence reputation.
Reaction to a book by Michael Wolff, Epstein wrote, "No questions Donald's statement was goofy. Early dementia?" By the way, talking Landon, this I thought was a notable exchange between him and Epstein in February 2016 regarding Trump. Landon writes, "It's getting scary. The stories you could tell." Epstein replies, "Wow." And Landon replies, "Actually, I don't think he/voters would care. Being effectively shameless is a pretty powerful weapon for a presidential candidate." And bad-mouthing continued, with Epstein writing in 2018, "Donald is close to no one. He talks to many people. He tells each one something different." Also in 2018, as Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, was pleading guilty and implicating the president in the hush money scheme, Epstein saw an opportunity. He emailed, again, Catherine Rumler, writing, quote, "You see, I know how dirty Donald is. My guess is that non-lawyers, New York biz people, have no idea what it means to have your fixer flip." So this email suggests that Epstein believed Cohen really had the goods on his former client. And maybe the most bizarre item in this entire document dump, and we have a lot more we want to get to, it's not even an email, it's a video. The files include this video from Epstein's estate that show a dog chewing on and attacking a plush doll that's made to look like Donald Trump. Weird. And there was also this notable exchange, by the way, regarding President Trump when he met Russian President Vladimir Putin in 2018. And this is where Epstein was perhaps saying, "Look, I get Donald Trump. I understand him. We should talk, okay?" So in an email to the former Prime Minister of Norway, Epstein writes, quote, "I think you might suggest to Putin that Lavrov can get insight on talking to me." And this is seemingly referring to Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister. And talking Russia and Trump, by the way, Epstein had this back and forth with Larry Summers. This is a former Clinton and Obama administration official. With Summers writing, "Do the Russians have stuff on Trump? Today was appalling even by his standards." To which Epstein writes back, "My email is full with similar comments. Wow. I'm sure his view is that it went super well. He thinks he has charmed his adversary. Admittedly, he has no idea of the symbolism. He has no idea of most things." And Epstein also wrote to Summers after Trump's inauguration saying, "Recall I've told you, I have met some very bad people. None as bad as Trump. Not one decent cell in his body. So yes, dangerous." And when approached for comment, by the way, by the New York Times on Wednesday, Larry Summers directed the New York Times to past comments where he had said that he had regretted his past associations with Jeffrey Epstein. Then we move on. There is a 2018 exchange, this is over iMessage, where the name of the sender is redacted, and this person says to Epstein, quote, "It will all blow over. They're really just trying to take down Trump and doing whatever they can to do that." And while the context of that message is not clear, Epstein responds, "Yes, thanks, it's wild, because I am the one able to take him down." We don't know what that means. I'm sure people will run with that, make whatever conclusions or assumptions they want. To be also clear, these are private communications, so there is a question of credibility. What was Epstein saying to people? Was he being honest? Was he just saying what he wanted to say? Was he saying what he thought other people wanted to say? Not exactly sure, but just take it for that. Now,
as powerfully as formal findings. The media landscape has also evolved dramatically since the original case first dominated headlines. Back then, traditional outlets largely controlled the narrative flow. Today, digital platforms fragment and accelerate it. Trending topics can explode globally within hours. Old photographs can resurface and reach millions before contextual explanations catch up. The intensity of the coverage reflects something deeper than partisanship. It reflects a cultural reckoning with how power structures operate. The original case revealed systemic failures, plea agreements that drew criticism, oversight that appeared insufficient, and institutions that struggled to hold influence accountable. The legacy of that failure lingers. For some observers, the renewed focus is a necessary continuation of accountability. They argue that no public figure should be immune from scrutiny, regardless of political affiliation. Transparency, they say, is foundational to democratic systems. For others, the wave of coverage appears selective or politically timed. They contend that resurfacing long-known associations
the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. This is in reference to maybe him being kicked out of Mar-a-Lago. Talking presidents. You know who else is featured in these photos? former President Bill Clinton. It's a photo from what appears to be years ago, possibly the 90s, featuring Clinton alongside Epstein, alongside Ghislaine Maxwell, and musician Jimmy Buffett and his wife, Jane Slagsvold. Clinton, too, is no stranger to being connected to the Epstein scandal. Vanity Fair had published a photo of him seemingly on Epstein's jet back in 2002. There was another photo of Epstein and Maxwell with then President Clinton back in 1993 at a White House event. It's reportedly in the archives at the Clinton Presidential Library. Clinton himself has confirmed that he was an associate of Epstein, but to be clear, he has always denied any knowledge of Epstein's criminal activity. In fact, there is a 2019 statement explaining how his Secret Service always accompanied him on trips that he took with Epstein. By the way, Clinton has never been criminally charged or officially implicated in any wrongdoing. And by the way, it was last year when these Epstein files were released that Johanna Schoberg, an Epstein accuser, claimed that Epstein told her Clinton, quote, likes them young, referring to girls. It was reported that Clinton traveled on Epstein's plane for what was described as humanitarian trips to Africa in the early 2000s after he left office. So again, seeing this photo, not a surprise. Okay, let me move on to, I just got to say it, the creepy ones. Yeah, the creepy ones. Photo of Jeffrey Epstein in the bathtub. Stuff of nightmares. Don't know who took that or when. Kind of reminds me of all of those photos that were released of Epstein from his 50th birthday scrapbook, which we went over in a previous sidebar. Then we got this weird selfie of Epstein with what appears to be his lip swollen up. It's weird. Don't know what that's about. Honestly, not sure I even want to. Obviously don't know if he took that, someone else did. Then I got to be kind of careful about this. We have photos of what appear to be sex objects. Again, got to be careful on what we show here, how I describe it. A jawbreaker gag with warning instructions. Someone wearing a black glove with ribbed fingers. You have another photo of BDSM material with rope and a shibari book, an extreme restraints catalog. Just all very unsettling considering we're talking about the guy who pled guilty back in the day in Florida to procuring a person under 18 for prostitution and solicitation. He was registered as a sex offender. He was subsequently arrested in 2019 for sex trafficking of minors before he died in his jail cell. So to see all this, unsettling. Yeah, unsettling to say the least. Now, there was another figure that has come out in these released photos that we got to talk about. Steve Bannon, former White House advisor. You have one photo of Bannon and Epstein together, sitting opposite each other with a big desk in between. You actually can see what appears to be a framed photo of a woman lying down. Back to Michael Wolff. He said about this photo in that Daily Beast podcast, this is an Epstein study. The study is on the second floor of that mammoth townhouse, what people say might be the largest private residence in Manhattan. Actually, Epstein said this, I'm not sure it's exactly true, but it's certainly up there. So this would be if you were creating a Jeffrey Epstein kind of diabolical character in the movies. This is the room that the set designer would create for that character. You have another photo of Bannon and Epstein taking a photo together in the mirror. Got another photo of Bannon talking with director Woody Allen, who we're going to discuss more in a minute. Another photo of Bannon with socialist activist, philosopher Noam Chomsky, who reportedly was in regular contact with Epstein over the years.
During key political cycles raises questions about motive. They argue that media narratives can be shaped by strategic interests as much as by new evidence. Meanwhile, survivors connected to the original crimes remain at the heart of the broader story. Their experiences triggered investigations that exposed the network. For them, renewed media focus can feel double-edged, amplifying awareness while also risking politicization of their trauma. Another layer to the conversation involves the permanence of public records, flight logs, guest lists, archived footage. These materials do not disappear. In an era of searchable databases and digital archiving, historical connections are never fully erased. They wait, sometimes quietly, until attention returns. The renewed scrutiny also highlights how public figures navigate past relationships. In elite circles, social gatherings often blend business, politics, and celebrity. Lines between acquaintance and endorsement can blur. When one individual within that network is later exposed for crimes, everyone who crossed paths faces
But with Bannon, this is, again, not surprising either, since we reported recently, in a previous Epstein materials release, all of these communications to and from Epstein that were published, including a June 2019 email, so this is right after a photo was taken of Trump shaking hands with Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, during a state visit. Epstein apparently wrote to someone who, according to CNN, appears to be Bannon, "Prince Andrew and Trump today, too funny." He added, "Recall Prince Andrew's accuser came out of Mar-a-Lago." Seemingly, if this is Bannon, appeared to reply, "Can't believe nobody is making the connective tissue." As reported by the BBC, there was another exchange, for example, from November 2018, where Epstein seemingly helped to arrange Bannon's travel to deliver a speech, to which Bannon replied, quote, "You are an amazing assistant." I mentioned Woody Allen, by the way. You have this photo of Epstein visiting Woody Allen on what appears to be a film set. You have another photo of them together with Epstein laughing, this time sitting at a table. Now, Woody Allen made the news earlier this year when, according to People, in a birthday letter to Epstein on his 63rd birthday in 2016, he seemingly compared Epstein to Dracula. They were New York City neighbors, apparently. Said in part, quote, "Being neighbors, my wife Sunyi and I have been invited for dinner many times, always accepting, always interesting. Wide variety of interesting people at every dinner just about. Politicians, scientists, teachers, magicians, comedians, intellectuals, journalists, an entomologist, a concert pianist. I say well served often, it's by some professional houseman, and just as often by several young women, reminding one of Castle Dracula, where Lugosi has 3 young female vampires who service the place. The large phone and computer at his right hand does take some of the relaxed home cooking atmosphere out of it, but one can't have everything. Not at Castle Dracula." Okay, but back to the photo release. You got this one too. Former Harvard professor Larry Summers appears on a plane with Woody Allen in one photo. Now, Larry Summers. The friendship between Summers and Epstein was also well reported too, with the Harvard paper, The Crimson, revealing Summers had apparently visited Epstein's island in 2005. Flight records, as part of a lawsuit, revealed that he allegedly traveled on Epstein's plane multiple times. But recently, when all of those emails came out that I mentioned, you see all of these communications between the men. Like where Summers was apparently looking to Epstein for romantic advice, with Epstein saying he's a, quote, pretty good wingman for Summers. Summers writing, "I didn't want to be in a gift-giving competition while being the friend without benefits." Got this exchange from just months before Epstein was arrested in 2019, where Summers apparently writes about some woman, "I said, 'What are you up to?' She said, 'I'm busy.' I said, 'Awfully coy you are.' Epstein apparently responds, 'She's smart, making you pay for past errors.'" You have another exchange where they discuss Trump, whom Summers called a clown in one 2017 email. So after all of this, and as we're thinking about this photo that was just released, Summers released a statement when those messages came out, saying, "I am deeply ashamed of my actions and recognize the pain they have caused. I take full responsibility for my misguided decision to continue communicating with Mr. Epstein." Now, he stepped back from his duties at Harvard. He resigned from his board position at OpenAI. You go back to the photo release, though, that we're talking about. Richard Branson's in one photo. The billionaire and investor who founded Virgin is seen sitting and smiling with a smiling Epstein behind him. Tropical area, appears to hold up a page from a notebook with calculations of some sort. And there's a guy sitting next to Branson, by the way.
Retrospective examination. Legal experts consistently caution against guilt by association. Being named in documents or appearing in photographs does not, in itself, constitute evidence of misconduct. However, critics counter that ethical leadership requires heightened awareness and judgment about associations, especially when warning signs emerge. Media organizations are walking a fine line. On one hand, there is a public interest in transparency. On the other, there is a responsibility to avoid sensationalism. The pressure to capture audience attention can sometimes blur that balance. The broader political implications remain uncertain. Will the intensified coverage alter public opinion? Will it influence campaign narratives? Or will it become another flashpoint in an already polarized environment where most opinions are firmly set? What is undeniable is that the legacy of this scandal continues to reverberate years later. It has become shorthand for elite impunity in the minds of many citizens. Every time the case resurfaces, it reignites broader conversations about systemic reform and equal accountability. In many ways, this moment reflects the intersection of three powerful forces: historical documentation, digital amplification, and political rivalry, each amplifies the others. A resurfaced document fuels online debate. Online debate fuels media coverage. Media coverage fuels political response. As the cycle continues, the core question remains larger than any single individual. How should societies handle past associations when new scrutiny emerges? What threshold of transparency satisfies public concern? And how can institutions maintain credibility in environments saturated with both information and misinformation? The resurfacing of this legacy underscores one enduring reality: history does not vanish, it evolves, it is revisited, it is reinterpreted through new cultural and political lenses. Whether this renewed media focus leads to substantive developments or gradually recedes, it reinforces a fundamental truth about modern public life. In the age of permanent records and viral discourse, the past is always only one trending topic away from returning to the present.